Number 9. Daniel and Mary Barrett. In early 2020, 40-year-old Daniel Barrett and his wife, a 43-year-old Air Force veteran named Mary, got into an argument about Mary's alleged infidelity. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, Daniel bludgeoned and stabbed his life partner to death with a fireplace poker in the couple's Plymouth, Pennsylvania home. 2 days later, he walked into a local police station and confessed to the murder. Officers went to the home and followed a trail of blood leading into the basement, where they found Mary's lifeless body on the floor with a hole in her skull. An autopsy ruled her death a homicide by blunt force trauma. Daniel told investigators that he was angry with Mary for spending time with another man. He said that he punched her in the face and then blacked out. When he regained consciousness, he was standing over his gravely injured wife with a pair of fire tongs in his hands. The betrayed husband then proceeded to attack Mary with a fireplace poker and a knife. He dragged her into the basement and left her for dead, then returned the next day and covered her remains with a sheet. Daniel claimed that he considered committing suicide before he decided to do the right thing and turn himself in. He pled guilty to first-degree murder and received a life sentence. Number 8. Hunter and Summer Tatum. Things turned deadly for a young Alabama couple last year when 26-year-old Summer Tatum discovered text messages between her husband, Hunter, and another woman. A days-long argument ensued over Hunter's online infidelity and video gaming habits, and it ended with Summer being rushed to the hospital with gunshot wounds. Hunter had reportedly dialed 911 and confessed to opening fire on his wife, who was 6 months pregnant and had cerebral palsy. Doctors performed an emergency delivery of the couple's premature son, Everett, but neither mother nor baby survived. Chief Assistant District Attorney C.J. Robinson told Auction.com that Summer had gotten angry because Hunter was having an affair over his gaming console with someone in another country. When she found out, she destroyed her husband's console, which led to the argument that resulted in her death. Hunter allegedly told detectives that the pair had wrestled over a handgun and that it had accidentally discharged and fatally shot Summer. But the evidence tells a much different story of a husband shooting his wife twice in the back of the head, execution style, according to prosecutors, who charge Hunter with 2 counts of murder and are pursuing the death penalty. Home surveillance footage reportedly shows Summer pleading with her husband not to harm her or their baby and saying, I'll stay. Moments later, he coldly shot her to death. Hunter is currently being held without bond as he awaits his arraignment. Number 7. Eric and Joyce Thompson. 34-year-old Eric Thompson found out in July of last year that his high school sweetheart and wife of 13 years, Joyce, was having an affair with their 47-year-old acupuncturist, John Tokuhara. Joyce abruptly ended the 2-month romance as soon as her husband found out about it. But that wasn't good enough for Eric. Just days before he and Joyce's 5th wedding anniversary, he drove to Tokuhara's acupuncture clinic in Waipahu on the Hawaiian island of Oahu. He carried a shopping bag inside before he allegedly pulled a gun out of the bag and shot his wife's secret lover 3 times. Surveillance footage reportedly revealed that Eric was inside the clinic for less than a minute before the fatal damage was done. Tokuhara's mother found his bullet-riddled body inside the clinic the next morning. At first, police were unsure who their suspect was. They narrowed their suspicions down to Thompson through the exhaustive process of tracking and interviewing 53 owners of white trucks, like the one they saw in the surveillance footage. As it turned out, Eric was the only vehicle owner who lacked an alibi for when the murder occurred, and the rest of the story's pieces fell into place from there. Police obtained even more surveillance footage and evidence that enabled them to establish a timeline of Thompson's whereabouts on the day of the murder. They also uncovered messages between Joyce and John, detailing how John wanted to continue the affair, only to be warned by Joyce to stay away or her husband might kill him. The pair had stopped communicating months before the deadly shooting. Tokuhara was recently arrested for second-degree murder and also faces numerous weapons charges. Number 6. Barry and Suzanne Morphew. It took detectives a while to piece together exactly what had happened after 49-year-old Suzanne Morphew disappeared from her Maysville, Colorado home in 2020. From their understanding, the woman and her husband, Barry, had recently argued about money. They also found text messages that Suzanne had sent to a friend saying that she was considering divorcing her husband. She also reportedly said that she felt unsafe near Barry and that he had shoved her into a closet and held a gun to his head in 2018. In the messages, Suzanne described how Barry had begged for another chance and refused to even discuss the topic of divorce. It eventually came to light that Suzanne had been involved in an extramarital affair for nearly 2 years before she vanished. She was secretly seeing a married man from Michigan and didn't tell a soul about it, including her family and friends. The pair met up at least 6 times in various cities and professed their love for each other, according to court testimony. At the same time, Suzanne suspected Barry of having an affair. The idea put her off enough for her to keep a recording device disguised as a pen in the house. Detectives found no evidence that Barry was cheating on his wife, but they did pick up a conversation between Suzanne and her lover. Barry told investigators that he suspected his wife of having an emotional affair at one point, but that he had no suspicions of physical cheating. Authorities eventually identified Suzanne's paramour, who said that he failed to come forward on his own and deleted evidence of their affair from his devices to protect himself and Suzanne's reputation. But the real suspicion for Suzanne's disappearance fell on Barry, who failed to report her missing. Instead, a neighbor made that call. Suzanne's mountain bike and helmet were later found in a steep ditch, but law enforcement didn't buy what looked like a staged accident, and they charged Barry with first-degree murder. His trial is scheduled to begin in April. Number 5. Pierre Tyler and Andres Wofford. 29-year-old Andres Wofford's father knew something was wrong when his daughter never showed up at his home to pick up her child one day last year. Wofford's parents contacted the police, who went to the woman's apartment and found her dead from a fatal gunshot wound to the head. Detectives connected the bullet to a gun belonging to 29-year-old Chicago police officer Pierre Tyler, Wofford's boyfriend and the father of her child. Tyler claimed that he had left the weapon at Wofford's apartment, but investigators didn't buy the story. Not only were they unable to find the gun, but the victim's keys and cell phone were also missing. Tyler stuck to his story, claiming that he was at Wofford's home until 9 p.m. the night before she was found dead, and that she was still alive when he left to meet with a confidential informant for his job. But the officer's partners said that they weren't with him that night, and it would have been highly unusual for him to meet with an informant alone. Neighbors reported hearing the couple arguing prior to Wofford's death. In the early evening, she had reached out to family members, asking them to pick up her child from daycare. Later that night, Wofford's father received a text from her phone saying that she was on her way over. It was the last he ever heard from her. That night, nearby residents heard a muffled bang coming from the victim's apartment, and then the arguing stopped. The pair were apparently fighting because Tyler had had a child with another woman during his relationship with Wofford. She was upset because she found out he had an upcoming child support hearing and suspected him of secretly marrying the mother of his other child, according to the Chicago Sun-Times. The Chicago Police Department fired Tyler and charged him with first-degree murder. He is currently being held without bail. Number 4. Mona Haidari. Mona Haidari was only 12 years old when she was forced into an arranged marriage in the Iranian city of Ahvaz. By the time she was 17, she had a 3-year-old child. Her husband began to suspect her of adultery, and soon enough, her family also found out about the alleged affair. Knowing that she would most certainly die in what's known as an honor killing, the young woman fled to Turkey. Mona's father and husband tracked her whereabouts and brought her back to Iran, where her husband and brother-in-law murdered her. Deeply disturbing video footage showed the husband walking around with the slain woman's decapitated head in his hand. Police raided the family's hideout and arrested the 2 suspected killers. The brutal killing sparked widespread outrage among the public, prompting the country's Vice President for Women's Affairs, Enzi Khazali, to call on Parliament to enact measures against this alarming type of violence. Honor killings are prevalent throughout certain parts of Iran, where wives are often killed over cheating suspicions. Sadly, the law exempts husbands from punishment if they witness their wife cheating and murder her for it. Only a woman's immediate family can order the man's execution for killing her, and this, unfortunately, doesn't happen often due to the cultural belief that her alleged actions have brought dishonor to their reputation. Number 3. Thomas and Beth Sudds. While responding to a welfare check in 2019, police found 56-year-old Beth Alsop Sudds dead in her Waterford Township, California home. She suffered from severe head trauma and had been stabbed at least 20 times. Her husband, 74-year-old Thomas Sudds, attempted suicide the next day and survived. Inside the home, police found a note that Thomas had written, stating that Beth had driven him crazy with all her affairs. Police charged him with first-degree premeditated murder. The trial revealed that Thomas had mentally unraveled in the months leading up to his wife's death. He became obsessed with the idea that Beth was cheating on him. The defense argued that the man was plagued by a variety of mental illnesses, as well as adverse effects for the medications he was taking for these conditions, which they claim led to a temporary bout of insanity. But the prosecution refused to concede to this narrative, arguing that Thomas was driven to kill by pure jealousy and anger. And it appeared as though the jury agreed. Thomas was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 2. Eric Mound and Holly Williams. Texas businessman Eric Mound was willing to pay a high price to get rid of his former mistress and her new boyfriend. He allegedly paid $750,000 to 3 hitmen to kidnap and murder the pair after they threatened to expose the married tycoon's affair. 33-year-old Holly Williams and her partner, 36-year-old William Lanway, were found dead in the woman's crashed car in early 2020. The vehicle had veered down an embankment and hit a tree, but the couple were not killed in what appeared at first to be a deadly accident. They had both been shot in the head. Police finally arrested Mound in late 2021. In what seemed to be a routine traffic stop, they pulled him over and charged him with conspiracy to commit kidnapping resulting in death, and using a firearm in relation to a violent crime. The 3 alleged hitmen, who are all former military members, were also arrested on the same charges. Mound is accused of paying the trio a hefty 6-figure sum to travel from Austin to Tennessee to carry out his plans with the couple. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the crime is that one of the suspects, 47-year-old Gilad Peled, owned a company called Spiritip Security, which helped clients respond to extortion demands. After the job was done, Mound wrote a raving review on the company's website, describing Spiritip as professional and commending its expedited services. Number 1. Arona and Sandra Peniamina. Arona Peniamina began to suspect his 29-year-old wife Sandra of cheating on him in 2016. He confronted her, and the allegations erupted into a violent argument that ended with Arona stabbing Sandra and bashing her in the head with a concrete post. She died from her injuries inside their Queensland, Australia home. An autopsy determined that she had been stabbed 29 times, indicating that her husband had murdered her in an unchecked fit of rage. Arona received a life sentence for murder in 2018, but the case wound up going back to trial. A jury accepted the man's argument that he had been provoked by Sandra's alleged infidelity and found him guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter. This time around, Arona was handed a much lighter sentence of just 16 years. The retrial's outcome sparked outcries among activists, lawmakers, and politicians who believe it's wrong for the law to go easy on someone due to so-called provocation. In other words, people are outraged that Arona fought his way out of a murder charge by arguing that his wife's alleged cheating had triggered his rage, thereby making him less responsible for his brutal reaction. But until the law changes, it unfortunately is what it is, and he'll be a free man by the time he reaches his mid-60s. Thanks for watching. If you had to choose, would you rather try to forgive your partner for cheating or spend the next 15 years single? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye!